Welcome back to an episode of Delayed Offside. As always, the rotation of guests actually occurs. We should kind of treat Sanjay, I think, like they do in those other shows where it's like a rotating guest, but there's one guest you see all the time. Like, I don't know, like how Richard Roper got in with Ebert after Siskel had died. You know, you'd be like, there's 7 people, but we've seen Roper 2 or 3 times. You know, it'd be like, here's Sanjay 2 or 3 times, but then here's somebody else. Like, here's a Canucks fan, here's some random Penguins fan. You know, something like that. I do think, this is a side note, I do think your response to him about this was like the worst excuse he's come up with to date was actually, well, that's not what you said, but you're kind of like,
I said, bingo card, a new square for a different excuse. Yeah. I've almost got a straight line.
That was pretty good. Like I will say, like I actually laughed out loud at that. So I like that. Well, like, click, subscribe. Thanks for listening. We're going to jump right into some of the big stuff today. And we're going to talk about injuries off the bat. Let's talk about injuries because this is something that's actually affecting both of our teams right now. As it came out today at the end of last game, and I didn't see what happened here. Morgan Riley suffered an injury. It looks like he's got an ACL strain, I want to say. I think is what it was. And he's looking
MCL,
out to be out for, was it MCL?
Yeah, I think it was
for about 4 weeks.
Something like that. Yeah, 4 to 6 weeks, I think I read.
And you're also missing.
Oh God. So, I mean, we're missing basically 3/4 of our top 4 on defense, right? So we're missing Brody, we're missing Muzzin, and we're missing Riley. And then we're still missing Samsonov as well.
Samsonov. So this has kind of been an interesting thing because the amount of injuries have come up have really, I guess, put the Leafs' depth into question. Not that it's like they didn't have depth, but I mean, you're stressing it at this many losses.
Oh yeah, like I mean, Mark Giordano, 39-year-old Giordano, who was a third pairing defenseman for us, is now our number 1. So it's definitely stretching us thin, and it's forcing the coaching staff to play Giordano more than they had wanted to, because he's really the only guy who can comfortably step into that role because he's done it before.
Yeah, and you'd see Sanjay right now would do the get close to the screen, the blink, and be like, Gio's really been a solid, number 1 defense. He's a couple removed from a Norris win. He does that, like,
that's pretty good.
He does this like he like has like a almost. There's a thing.
The guy knows what he's doing.
But there's a thing in acting school. It's like when you complete a thought, you're supposed to blink. I don't know if you guys remember that, but there was a line. It was like when you get to the end of a thought, when you're doing stage stuff or like film, you blink then, but you don't blink while you're speaking. Like you blah 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 blah. And that's what Sanjay kind of does sometimes. Like Gio is doing a really good job. He's had lots of experience to go. And they're like, okay, he's done his thought. You're set to go. But actually, like Giordano has been a number 1 defenseman before, but he's a couple years removed from that. Do you feel comfortable with him stepping in for that time?
Short term. I don't know if, I mean, he has a lot of miles on that body, and so, I think it'd be okay for a little while, but if he has to do this for an extended period of time, I think the Leafs are going to be in trouble. Losing Riley, I mean, yeah, he might not be the greatest defensive player in the world, but I mean, he's still the team's number 1 defenseman, and he's great at a lot of things, and he plays the most minutes. Losing him is going to be tough to replace. And Brody, TJ Brody, whoever he's paired with instantly plays better. Like the guy is just such a comfort to whoever he's united with, that all of a sudden they're fantastic analytic darlings, whereas before they were crap. It's amazing the influence he has on his defensive partners. Trying to insert Giordano into one of those spots, it's tough. I mean, Giordano's played really well, but I don't know if he's ever played more than 20 minutes a game this season. I'm sure he has like once or twice, but the coaches have made it a priority to keep his minutes down just to keep him fresh for the season. But like I said, they're going to have to see if he has what it takes to still play that many minutes, because who else do you put in that spot? I mean, you have Sandino Liljegren, who are both really young. You have Justin Hall, who is definitely not a number 1 defenseman. And then they brought up, what was his name? A guy who hasn't played in the NHL yet, Hollowell. I
That
can't.
sounds like a fake name if I've ever heard
Something
one.
like that, but
like made up on the spot. Like,
I just saw the lines today, and I was just like, who is that?
Jeremy or something.
Who
like
is that? And
God.
it's sad that I don't know all the players on our AHL roster.
It's sad that you don't know the sixth
Oh, sweet.
level.
There you go. I got it.
Sixth level call up.
Beauty.
I don't
See,
believe
there
it's the
you
real
go.
name. Adam, your team's suffering a little bit of the other side of it. It's not so much your defensive core, which is terrible. It's the forward depth that's actually been tested here. So right off the bat, you've had Yamamoto being out since basically the start of the season with some type of injury that's been undisclosed, not even traveling with the team at this time. Now, Evander Kane having essentially a to the bone laceration on his arm, requiring surgery, is out for months. And I guess last one, would have been Jack Campbell taking a puck to the face on the bench, but he's, from all accounts, going to play. So I don't know, but this has kind of tested the forward depth, partially because the other forwards aren't producing. And there's been a real drop off in scoring for this team, which was kind of like last season at the end of the playoffs, looked like a high flying, high scoring affair. So let's talk about that a little bit. How have these losses affected the team, and what solutions, if any, are actually out there?
Well, it's created a really Jekyll and Hyde look for the Edmonton Oilers. It's been one win where they look really legit, and you're like, okay, this is the team. This is the team we've been waiting for. And then it's like a heartbreaking loss, or like another win and then a heartbreaking loss. That being said, I mean, they played the Kings, and they played okay against the Kings, but they couldn't get shots through. They were kept to the outside. It was a tighter game than what it looked like on the ice. It looked like they were outplayed massively, especially defensively. But they're struggling, and they're constantly putting their lines in the blender. And yeah, they're professionals, and they should be able to play with anybody. But at the same time, how can you create a good chemistry when you're constantly putting your lines in the blender? And that's something we saw with Dave Tippett at this time last year, when throughout, until they made the coaching change with Woodcroft. Now, what my worry is that, are they going to play Draisaitl and McDavid into the ground? Because when their ice time was lowered, their production went up when Woodcroft came in.
Sorry, go ahead.
What's that? Go ahead. I was
gonna say, it's funny because Sanjay made a comment about how McDavid and Draisaitl have so much ice time versus the Calgary forwards, and my counter argument would be that's because Calgary doesn't have anyone elite.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just joking, but what I do think it is you ride them because they're the nuclear option. It's you're in a horse race and you have a car, and so you ride the car, but then eventually you run out of gas. So I don't know. I know exactly what you're saying.
Someone's got to, but someone's got to show up, because you can't get scoring from guys. We're not getting anything from guys without the names of McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Virtually everyone else is off the sheet.
And I think that's another issue. It's not so much even that you've lost players, it's that the other players there have lost production as well. Jespel Jarvi at the start of last season came out firing, and he has one goal, and I think it's an empty netter so far this year. Although he did look better last game, but still, he's a guy you kind of expected would pick up. And at the same time, the defensive core is not actually producing very much at all either right now. And that was something last season that they were much stronger at. But right now, it feels like they can't get shots through at all. Evan Bouchard's struggling. Tyson Barrie is struggling. Nurse's numbers are down, although there's some thinking that he's actually fairly injured right now at the start of the season already, and that might be part of it. This leads us to our next point here, fellas, which is the American Thanksgiving is statistically the marker for how teams do. And so a quarter way through, and 77% of the teams that are in a playoff spot by American Thanksgiving make the playoffs, which, if it holds up, 4 of the teams in the non-playoff position are going to make it. What of those 4 teams? The non-playoff teams are Pittsburgh, Montreal, Florida, Philadelphia, Washington, Columbus, Buffalo, Ottawa, Edmonton, Nashville, Minnesota, Chicago, Arizona, San Jose, Vancouver, and Anaheim. I'm going to assume that Calgary and Edmonton just flop spots, hey? Because Calgary was out last time I looked.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Calgary's 8th and Edmonton's 9th.
Yeah, that's what I've got too.
And technically Thanksgiving is Thursday. So depending how things go tomorrow, maybe flip again.
It may flip again. You never know.
Could hopefully maybe the Pittsburgh Penguins show up for once. And maybe the Islanders don't. That would help. But which of those teams do you think is a playoffs contender? And which of the current teams in do you think isn't? Curveball. Ryan, go ahead.
I will go with. I mean, I don't want to say it's a fairly easy one, but it's one that I don't think is too far fetching, and that's the Pittsburgh Penguins. I'll say they're a playoff team, not only because they're just slightly outside the playoff spot right now, but also they have the best advanced stats amongst all the non-playoff teams right now. And I mean, they have a pretty average defense, but their offense is elite. That, it makes more than makes up for it. And Tristan Jarry hasn't had a very good start to the season either. And I remember that happened last year as well. And Pittsburgh started off really slow because Jarry was trying to find his game. And then when he turned it on, that team rose up in the standings fairly quickly. So I could potentially see that happening again if Jarry finds his game like he did last year. And, a team with Crosby, Malkin, Letang, etc. I think they'll make the playoffs. And as for who they'll knock out, I'll say the Detroit Red Wings. It's very impressive how this team has transformed and how quickly they're coming along, but I just don't think they're quite there yet.
Adam, who do you think is going to make it, and who do you think is going to get kicked out?
I'm going to say, is this for the East?
This can be for the entire league.
Oh, okay. I'm going to say Edmonton does creep in, and I say who's coming out is, it's going to be Seattle. I think Seattle's playing a bit above what they are. They've got a hell of a record right now, but I mean, I don't know. I don't see them sustain.
I think they had a soft schedule to start too. Somebody said, but I might be wrong on that now. But I was pretty sure that they had one of the easier starts to the schedule.
10-5-3.
It's a good record.
It's a really good record.
Well, the thing with Seattle too was I remember last year a lot of people saying their analytics were actually really strong, but their goaltending was terrible last season, and then they couldn't get the offense either. And so now that they're actually getting some decent offense and their goaltending is holding up a little bit more, you're kind of seeing, because they are a strong defensive team. Like they have a pretty good defensive core there.
Yeah, but it's funny. Like it's funny how much the conversation changes, because if you recall and you listen to the start of the season, they're like, which player should be targeted? It's always last season's bad teams. If people are like, well, who should they take off of Vegas? Who should be taken off of Seattle? And now none of those teams are giving up anybody like at all. Right. So that's kind of one of the strong point there. I will go with, and I think that this is, I don't know, like right now, St. Louis has 10 wins, 8 losses, and Nashville, Edmonton, Calgary, and St. Louis all have the same amount of points. I could see St. Louis dropping out. I'm not guaranteeing it. I could see it because they had a really rough run there for a while.
They had a really bad start.
Picked up. Yeah, they did, and that's problematic. So I think that's one I could see. I think Edmonton will be in, but Calgary I think will be in too. Like that's the other thing. Like I know they're there right now, but it by the day of they might be on the outs again. In which case, if that's the case, I think they've been. But I'll also say Florida. Florida is on the outs, and I just don't see them being out all season. They've had some tough injuries too, but I think that they'll put it together when the time is right.
Who do you see them knocking out of the East, Baron?
I hope they're out.
Let me see. What place is Toronto in? That's the question I need to see. No, I'm kidding. I just gotta reload the standings because I knocked it off. I think Detroit was
Boston,
a good choice.
Toronto, Tampa
for that part, and I'm gonna say I don't think New York. I mean, I know they got a 12-8 record. I don't think the Islanders are as good as they've been. I don't.
Agree with that. Yeah. You just hope they're not going to be.
No, exactly.
You want to see them in the playoffs.
Both. I hope tomorrow they're terrible. That'd be great.
Yeah.
But we're talking about this like it looks like Boston's the top team. Patrice Bergeron just hit his 1,000th point, which is pretty damn impressive. He's probably an automatic Hall of Fame player, as he should be. And what's your favorite memory of him, Ryan?
I don't
As a
have
Leafs
any
fan,
good
you've had lots of time to observe his greatness.
Olympics are my favorite memory of him. Nothing with Boston, because he was the one who scored the overtime winner against the Leafs in that comeback, right? Was that him?
Oh, that was my memory.
Yeah. So that's my nightmare. He gives me nightmares. I can't wait till he retires.
He's like actually legitimately unrealistic. Like he's so good.
It's insane how like every year he's a Selke winner or finalist or whatever, and every year we're like, okay, Bergeron, even Marchand too. They're eventually going to age out here. Like the team's going to get worse because they're just getting older, and every year they're still elite players. So he's a machine.
I thought they were done. I really did. Yeah, and they're just keep that window open every year. Hey.
And like now all of a sudden they're like the best team in the league. Like, where the hell did that come from? Right? They were supposed to have such a tough start to the season, and it didn't matter how many guys were injured. They just plug in guys and continue to win. So
is it because the East is soft? Like, legitimate question. Like, is it not a hard division? Just because they have points doesn't mean they're hard to play against. Like, Jersey seems to be ridiculous right now, but what about the other teams? Like, are they really crushing?
I think there's like more. I think everyone else is more like there's more parity this year than last year. Like last year, you had a lot of elite. Like by Thanksgiving, I think it was, you could basically tell which teams in the East were making the playoffs and which weren't. Like there was the haves and haves nots. Over the offseason, a lot of the elite teams got worse, and a lot of the terrible teams got better. And so I think you're seeing a lot more parity. And so it really feels like there's Boston, at least in the Atlantic, Boston, and then just like a big space, and then the rest of them. Like that's how it feels.
34 points to 25 points. Like that's a huge difference.
Yeah. So, and then
34 to 32 for Jersey. 34 to 32 for Jersey. I was just looking at that.
Yeah, Jersey's another powerhouse, right? So,
yeah.
But it feels like overall, like the Leafs right now I think they're 10th or 9th in the league in points percentage, and they have like basically a 500 record.
Yeah.
So like they're like the top third of the league, and yet they're basically treading water. Like that's how much parity there is in the league right now.
But they're 10-5-5. Like that's
right. Like they're getting loser points. I know that, but I mean they're not. That's not an elite record, 10-5-5.
No,
and yet they're still top 10 in the league in points percentage. So I think you're seeing a lot of parity in the league right now. I think that we really saw like that salary cap hit, not going up every year. It really did feel like it really affected teams this past offseason, and you're seeing in the standings right now.
When you guys watch a team like the Devils, which is not a team that I think anyone thought was going to be as good as they have been, do they feel like they're going to be a good playoff team, or does this feel like you're watching the Panthers a couple of years ago where they were like so dominant, doing so well that when it comes to playoff and the hockey style changes, that they might have a drop off? Like, is that unrealistic, or is that a potential?
I don't know. It's tough because I
have heard that
like the past two games that I've watched, they're like an attack when you make a mistake and quick transition team. And that's something that could kill you in the playoffs. Like they attack hard and fast off that like mistake at the blue line or in the neutral zone. They get in there faster than you, and they like watching that Jesper Bratt and Jack Hughes line, man, they were scary, and they just created chance after chance after chance.
But do you think that's sustainable? Like, because I mean, Florida used to crush teams everywhere, and they got in the playoffs, and they were struggling to try to get past the first round. And in fact, they didn't. Their best year, or did they get? Was that last year? Was their best year?
Last year was their best year, but even last year, I remember looking at their
second round,
their defensive stats, and it really wasn't that impressive. Like they were riding all offense, and so I think, as long as a team has a good defense, a sound defense, I think you have a little more faith. I don't know where New Jersey is on that. I can take a look and just see, but I know, for Florida, that was the thing I was always wondering about with them was, are they legit? Because, when things get a little tighter in the playoffs, are they going to be able to handle, the shutdown type of game that you might have to play? So, just taking a look to see where. Oh my God, New Jersey's so expected goals against per 60 at 5-on-5. First place, New Jersey Devils.
So you think it is sustainable then?
It very well could be. I mean, I guess the one thing I would argue against them would be just the experience, the playoff experience of some of their players, especially their young stars. They haven't really experienced that yet. And so, there might be a learning curve or two that they have to go through. So I don't think very often you see a team that didn't make the playoffs last year, right? New Jersey didn't make the playoffs last year, right?
No, they were terrible.
That's right. They were bad last year. So, they didn't make the playoffs last year to all of a sudden winning the cup. It's pretty unprecedented, but they could maybe make some noise, win a round or two.
Or get swept in the first.
Or, become the Leafs.
Play that 8 seed team that's just dominant and go. Honestly, I think the adversity is good for the Leafs. I think that was part of their issue. They didn't really have adversity until the end. And then when they had adversity, it just really overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens here. I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see what occurs with a lot of our teams. Outside of our teams, who has, I guess the Devils, because we talked about a lot, but who else has surprised you guys this season, or who else deserves some accolades or attention? Go with you first here, Adam.
I'd say the Dallas Stars. They're first in their division. They were really defensive, tighter team last year that, generated 1 or 2 goals a game. Now with the coaching change and DeBoer coming in, they are firing on all cylinders. Like I'd say, I think I have 3 Dallas Stars on my fantasy team, and like Jason Robertson's just been a scoring machine. He looks like a deal on that contract now. Jamie Benn seems to have found his form again.
Punched out last night.
Pavelski's playing unreal again. Like that team is clicking.
The fact that you didn't mention Rope Hintz.
It's because he doesn't have him on his fantasy team.
It's because
that's 100%. 100%. This is the guy. Did you guys see the video of Jamie Benn getting just punched out by Manson?
Oh yeah,
yeah, he got rocked.
Nice and dropped. Yeah,
got rocked. I'm just trying to pull up
Jamie Benn goes down. Jokes were everywhere last night, everywhere. So that was actually a great point. Pilon, who's your team since you can't take New Jersey or?
Can I go the opposite way of like a team that's like
Sure.
disappointed that I thought would be really good?
Sure.
How about
He's like,
how about
don't
the Capitals?
Don't say Leafs.
No, I was gonna say, what about the
Capitals? The Capitals made a bunch of off-season moves that actually looked better. Like they grabbed Connor Brown from the Senators. They improved their goaltending theoretically in Darcy Kemper. And they haven't been very good at all, have they?
No, they really haven't. Like I know Nick Backstrom was injured. I don't know if he's back yet, or is he still out? Is he done?
I think he's going to be done. Like, I think it's like potential that he is done.
Oh, really? Yeah.
PJ Oshie, Wilson.
Oh yeah, Wilson's out. So I think that's probably what's going on. Is just in an injury riddled season is just kind of derailing them. So, but I mean, they're a team that you just always kind of expect there to be there in the playoffs, and they're like quite a ways down. Another team is the Wild. The Wilds just felt like an up and coming team, and like Kaprizov had like the league on fire, and I thought they were going to go far in the playoffs last year. Like I really thought that they were going to make some noise. And I think is it this? Yeah, this is the year now that
this is
that cap crunch where they lost Suter and Parise, and like that's obviously affected them huge. Like they weren't able to fill in the team around those superstars now because of that decision. So they kind of went for
Fiala, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So they kind of went for it and it didn't happen for them. And, it might be a bit of hurt for a while until they can get some cap back because they're playing with a disadvantage that other teams don't have.
I'm going to go with Winnipeg here because I think Winnipeg is a team that by the end of last season, people were talking about blowing it up. Blow this up. The locker room conversations at the end, they were fighting. They weren't happy. Scheifele looked kind of like a bitch at the end of last season for how he was acting. And no, he really did. And honestly, he hasn't been that good for Winnipeg this last little while, or at least previous season. And now all of a sudden, like Hellebuck looks Vezina as good of a Vezina candidate as he ever has been.
Yeah.
Their defense isn't great, and they're still getting wins. They're suffering
Kyle Connor's
injuries,
been
and
struggling
they're still in
too.
a good spot. Kyle Connor's been struggling, but they're
Ehlers is out.
winning.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of impressive actually that they're doing well. But at the end of the day, if this is another team that drops off, I wouldn't be surprised.
No, I wouldn't either. I've heard of quite a few debates on various podcasts over, is this team simply Connor Hellebuck and that's it? Or is there something else going on? Like, is the new coaching actually helping this team improve? I personally see it as it's mostly Hellebuck personally, but maybe I'll be proved wrong. Like, I mean, it's been long enough now that, at some point you would expect that to, not be able to hold up. So we'll see.
No, it's just kind of an interesting choice. Yeah. Cause I don't think you how long till you burn out? Right.
Right.
I mean, we look at one of the worst teams right now in the league is the Anaheim Ducks. And they had a guy who was arguably one of the most elite goaltenders for a few years.
Yeah.
And he is just worn. And honestly, after he leaves, he'll either be amazing or he'll be garbage. And I have no clue which one he is. But Connor Bedard won't make them good in a year. I'll tell you that much. Mind you, they did have lots of good pieces, but I don't know what's happened there, because last season they looked better than they do this season. So I'm not sure what happened with the Ducks, to be honest with you. And I think the Senators too. The Senators had a lot of hype.
Oh,
those fans are taking a beating now. Eh? Like, everyone is just, but like, they did it to themselves. And their GM too said the rebuild's over once again, said it's second year in a row. And I'm just, you guys, you got to have some patience. It's a rebuild. Like, yeah, you got some great young talent here, but that defense still looks pretty weak. And I mean, like I said before, you're expecting some of these young guys to jump from 60 points to 90 points in a season. Like, some guys can do that. Yeah, but not everyone can. And certainly not every single young player on your team is going to do that. So, yeah.
What do you think about I think it was Zaitsev? Is it Zaitsev that they pushed down to their minors? Is that his name? The defenseman?
Zaitsev.
Yeah. And so what do you think about the idea that he nixed a trade between them and Vancouver for Tyler Myers? Do you blame him? Or would you think it'd be better to go to Vancouver?
I don't know. How is it different?
No, I probably actually prefer to stay with Ottawa if you think you're going to actually get to play, because to me, Ottawa, there's a vision. Like, you can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel with Ottawa,
but it doesn't include you. Like,
I guess that's true.
Like, here's our grand plan. You won't be no. Go.
Get out.
Get out. Oh, what a vision. Where am I?
He's like, well, even if if I play at least just a few games, maybe I'll get my name on the cup or something.
Is that me? No, that's Zub. Oh. Okay.
Oh.
Well, and because Vancouver could definitely use some more bodies on the back end, so maybe you'd actually get a better chance to play. But
yeah, that's interesting. We're down to our final five, so I want to just hit on another retro reverse jersey for the week. And the one I picked for this week was the Tampa Bay Lightning's throwback rainstorm jersey. I don't know the actual word for what that jersey is, but it is one of the all-time ugliest jerseys of all time, the original. And it is rare as all hell. If you try to find from those alternative third jerseys that popped up in the early 2000s, the late 90s, the Wild Wing jersey, which the Ducks did a piece of last year, and the Tampa Bay jersey are probably your two hardest to find and most expensive to get. There's a very famous, well, it's not famous, I guess. One of the most common pictures when you look up like that jersey is Wendell Clark wearing it. And it's just kind of an unusual thing to see, but God damn, is that ugly. Like, it is beyond ugly. So this year they made some upgrades and some changes to it. And if you look at it, like, you'll notice one of the big changes is they've gone from a gray to a white background for it, which is kind of surprised to me that was like the decision. And I don't know how they pick who gets to do the white jerseys, because they always had a white jersey, which Adam's wearing last time, and now they get a dark. Like, I'm not sure how it goes, but they went from like a blue to a white background. The lightning bolts are still on the sleeves, which is pretty sweet. And they did like the kind of like rank shocking letters and kept the ocean water on the bottom.
Yeah.
It's I think it's going to be one of the hot selling ones, because I think for the same reason,
Different.
it's so different. And because it's ugly, you might think that no one else will buy it. But what are your thoughts on this jersey?
Yeah, it's ugly. It looks like I'm a oh my God. I'm a D&D fan, and it looks like something a druid would wear. Like, it looks like there's like, that does not look like lightning to me. That looks like thorns on the side, on the sleeves.
On the sleeves.
Sleeves. It's like thorns. It does not look like lightning. The lightning's,
and the fact it's like orange, right? Like, it doesn't match any other part of the jersey.
Yeah,
well, it's more of a yellow
or yellow,
like,
whatever.
Picture, it's a yellowness. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like someone pissed down the arm, like, and it's thorny. Like, it just, to me, it doesn't look good. And when it's storming, you want to see a darker background, like the white and black contrast. Maybe have the black.
But do you like I don't know, and you probably can't see it, but like, do you like that version better, like the original?
No,
I don't know what the original.
No, I don't. I think there's too much going on, honestly, in a bad way.
It's like someone decided
raindrops.
To paint. It's like there's raindrops going by. There's
like
the ocean. I do kind of like how they do the numbers, like a little light, like in the lightning design. I think that's kind of cool. I don't know. I don't mind it. Like, the sleeves I don't like. Like, I don't like how the coloring of the sleeves doesn't match anything else on the jersey. But if you took out the sleeves and it was just all black all the way down, I don't know. I kind of like it. It's really different.
To me, I think the best thing about it is that it is so different. It's so different. It's so unique. And if you look, like, there's lots of stuff. Like, so Dallas they talked about doing the Taurus jersey, and the ownership and the group was like, no way in hell will you ever see that jersey again. Whereas at least this organization was like, okay, here's this ugly jersey that we did. We will, let's bring it back, let's bring it back. Let's have some fun with this and at least do something neat and unusual. And I will give them credit for that. I don't necessarily like it, but I like that they did something completely different. And then it does stand out, and it just pops. I don't know. It's not my favorite jersey though. Like, I'm not rushing to buy it. I would love to have the original, but I'm not rushing to buy this one by any means.
It looks better on ice. Like, I watched a little bit of the Tampa game the other night, and like, they look decent, but it looks better than it does as a template. Like, but still an ugly jersey.
If you want a blank one, $209 at coolhockey.com.ca specifically. Do the .ca because it saves yourself some money. But I'm telling you, this one could become a collector's item in a couple of years. You're a little negative on it, but I'm telling you, they love ugly jerseys, and that's the key.
That's right.
All right, final thoughts here. We head into our final minute wrap up for this one. Like, click, subscribe. Thanks for listening. Feel free to send us your ideas as to what happened to Sanjay, who should replace Sanjay, in a rotating basis, not a permanent basis. Mind you, we won't know until the day of, so it'll be a struggle to get a host. But what are your last final thoughts to close out here for 44 seconds?
First quarter of the season has been a bit of a trudge, but like, it's looking okay. There's still 3 quarters left. I'm excited for the rest.
I've got 1 square left on my Sanjay excuses bingo dabber card, and so I am probably going to win the grand prize. Just 1 left.
All right. Well, with that, as always, I'm Baron.
I'm Adam.
I'm Ryan.
This is Delayed Offside. Thanks for listening.
Delayed Offside.